Folks, welcome back to the iHealth Channel, iHealth Radio. We're your host, Hurricane H. New day, great show, great guest. A lot of discussion today is going to be around, wellness. And, we may talk about some anxiety and all the stuff that is happening, some psychology, because my guest, as you can see with me here today, has literally lived at the intersection of healthcare, corporate leadership, psychology, human performance, and his mission is to redefine, really redefine how we approach wellness under pressure, which is a very common thing these days. Pressure is a big deal. So Farhan Zahid is the founder and CEO of KNKO and creator of the Align and Focus frameworks designed to help high performance transform anxiety into clarity and pressure into power. With more than 20 years of experience spanning nursing, psychiatric care, corporate consulting, risk leadership, hypnotherapy, yoga, and wellness coaching, Farhan brings a rare perspective on what truly helps people thrive mentally, physically, and emotionally. His belief is simple: real wellness isn't fragmented, it's integrated. Farhan, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thank you. That's such a kind intro. I appreciate that, and it's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, hold on. The pleasure is mine, dude. That's. I mean, introductions can never do a true judgment, like give a real picture. But that's a lot of work, dude. A lot of diversified, background there, and it's impressive. I mean, so let's start with that. Let's talk about your journey. I mean, you've kind of transited in a lot of space, and from the healthcare, concept and working in the like as a psychiatry nurse into the today is running a company of wellness. So let's talk about that whole story. Like, what got you into that work in the first place, and then eventually what got you into transiting to where we are today.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been lucky enough to have really what I refer to as two parallel careers. I mean, if it was all linear, people often say like, "How old are you? Are you like 100 years old?" Given you've done all these things, but I got into healthcare 20 plus years ago as an auxiliary nurse, and I did medical nursing for a few years. I was with an agency, so I did medical nursing for a few years across a number of units and wards. And then I moved and transitioned into psychiatric nursing for a few years. Again, working across various units, mostly both my work on both sides was actually with kids. And then from there, because in parallel I was doing my university degree, I did a mathematics degree. I ended up doing an internship with Deloitte and joined Deloitte in their healthcare consulting practice. And so in the UK, healthcare is part of the government, right? It's the National Health Service. So I ended up doing work with the NHS and then taking that to other government bodies. And then after a few years, I came across here to San Francisco on a 2-year secondment, continuing in the healthcare consulting space, but branching out into various other areas. So risk management, internal audit, compliance, ethics, cybersecurity. I kind of did a really wide spectrum. And while I continued in the healthcare space throughout, I had a lot of healthcare clients. I also branched out a lot more into other industries, so finance and education and technology, etc. But continued with Deloitte for quite some time. And then I left and became the global head of risk for a financial investment firm, which Generate Capital. I was with them for 3 years, and then I left to launch KNKO. And I'll kind of take a step back here because this is where I say these careers happen in parallel. You rewind a number of years, and while I was at Deloitte, there was a point where I really wanted to get back to being, I'll use the phrase hands-on, which is kind of a little bit cliche in this moment, but kind of really just being close to working with people and helping people every single day. And so I trained and got certified as a clinical massage therapist, and working with clients mostly in the clinical space. As what I would find is 60 to 70% of my clients wouldn't be on my table if they just stretched more. And so I was like advising them to, regularly stretch. And then I realized I should learn how to advise stretching professionally. So I became a certified yoga teacher. Yoga was an incredible experience. And then that led me to something called Yoga Nidra, which in the West is often referred to as I mean, it is a form of guided meditation, but it's deeper than that. It's more spiritual than that. It has much more impact than that. But as I became a yoga nidra practitioner, I then realized it's actually an ancient form of hypnotherapy, and
Mm.
so I that led me to hypnotherapy, and I became a clinical hypnotherapist. So, in launching KNKO, I was able to bring these two plus decades, 20 plus years of being in the corporate space and 20 plus years of being in health and wellness, and really bring that together. And that's really how, as you kind of say, I've now become the CEO and founder of KNKO, and really looked to bring all of that knowledge and experience together for my clients, and really help people. Really, that's the mission. So.
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations. I mean, because well, first of all, it's I'm listening to you, and I I have to admire how you did it all. And for people that are watching and listening, the beginning of their paths and careers, you know, that's the way to do it, folks. I mean, it's hard, but it is the best way. And I've done similar, paths where I had to do multiple things at the same time. There's, parallel careers that go in. You're learning double time or triple time sometimes, and it makes you better at, and whatever. I guess future enterprises or endeavors that you're going to get into, and frankly your work, and but I love what you did. Like, you needed to get more hands on, you got more hands on, you did more, you learned the tricks. And that's the thing, like whatever it is, folks, out there, we are in the early days. By the way, there's no time limit to this. It doesn't matter what age, what level of your career, but there's always a restart point where you can, and whatever you already accumulated can be, used now for whatever purpose that you have. But I love that you combine all the skills that you've learned over the years and kind of put them into one mashup, and now you're delivering a whole new concept. And all the stuff that you learned, whether it's the finance stuff or the healthcare pieces, all that, you put a concept together. Now you can run. No one can challenge you like, hey, you can't run this thing, because you can say, I can do it, I've been doing it, I've done it all, I know it inside out. And that makes you the type of leadership. And that's, again, this is more of a health show, but leadership, in healthcare is a very big role. I mean, I talk a lot about leadership in my reels, and in my space, and because I mean, I've done a lot of leadership training and things like that, as being in a higher role in terms of the insurance space or the healthcare piece and the payer side. And to me, that's important, because how you lead, drives everything else, right? And your vision, your mission, the work you do, how you, and the knowledge and the skills you have, because you can easily work with your teams and get them to the next level, and it makes a big difference. So I wanted just to commend that, and really share that with our folks watching right now, because hey, listen, you never know. Whatever you're doing right now, maybe you're not sure, maybe it's like, I want to change careers, I want to do a different path. This can make a difference for you. So hey, that's it. But now listen, this is the interesting thing. Now, that wasn't, you started in the UK, but now
Mhm.
you're in the US. Now,
Yeah.
two different systems, complete systems, especially when healthcare. I mean, I would say the U.S. healthcare is very convoluted, very difficult to work with. I mean, the insurance is just one portion, the healthcare, the policies, all this stuff. In the UK, it's a whole different system. I mean, it's more of like 3 points, a government, based, program. So it's kind of a little, change. What was, that clash for you? Like when you kind of like, decided to do this, I mean, how hard was it? I mean, for people that are like, wow, I mean, that's pretty impressive to make that transition and be able to get into a space which is completely different.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. I actually wanted to. There's a couple of points, well, a number of points you made there. There's a couple of those that I wanted to respond to, and I definitely want to respond to this question as well.
Sure.
Firstly, I appreciate everything you said there, and I absolutely want to emphasize for people who may be listening, the idea of transferable skills. You may think things like, well, you were in nursing, but then you went into consulting, and those skills, like they feel very, very different. What is interesting is when I interviewed with Deloitte all those years ago, back then it was very much the old school way of interviewing. So, please give an example of when you did this. Please give an example of when. And I admittedly, I had done some prep, but not a huge amount of prep for the interview. So I was really just kind of responding to those questions on the fly. And they would say something like, well, give an example of working in a team, or working under pressure. And I'd be like, well, I've worked in the emergency room. So if you don't do something correctly or you don't communicate well with your team, somebody's going to die, and they would be like, okay, tick, like they'd be like, give an example of whatever, good communication. And I'd be like, well, I have to deal with teenagers who might be suicidal and they're schizophrenic. So they may have four voices in their head telling them to commit suicide, and I have to be the one voice to get through to convince them otherwise. And they'd be like, oh, okay, tick, So it's amazing how you have certain skills, but they can be very easily transferable in ways that you don't expect. The other part you talked about in terms of leadership, in and this will now kind of segue into answering your question. There are a lot of actual parallels between the UK system and the US system, and then there are massive differences really around payment and private versus public. But one of the key parallels is that both systems are actually now starting to recognize wellness and the need for wellness. And really what they refer to wellness as is preventative care, right? Keeping people
Mhm.
well. But the issue with both systems is they're designed for treating people who are ill, not for keeping people well. So when you think about the reimbursement model on the back end, and this was like, again, if we talk about leadership, right, really, this is something that I had to figure out in launching my own business. And it was to say, if I take away all the infrastructures that are there and I just put my client at the center of it, right? What is the best model, right? How can I help my client achieve their goals in the best way? And when you look at things like insurance, or you look at things like, payment reimbursement in the UK, they don't know how to pay for a service that keeps you well, right? Like, how do you prove that that service was effective?
Mhm.
And if there's multiple services working together, well, how much of the payment gets apportioned to which service and things like that. And so it creates this really convoluted system in the back end that can make it difficult for us to move towards much more preventative care, much more, services that keep you well versus those services that just treat you when you're ill. And then also both systems are under a lot of strain, with the way that they work. So that was a real piece for me, was really pushing the edge forward of what a wellness company can be and how should it be oriented around our clients. And that really fed into the design of KNKO, which took a lot of time and thought to pull together. But that is now how we orient ourselves around our clients.
Well, there's quite a bit there. So there's, well, first of all, thank you for kind of sharing some of that value there in terms of, the comments I made about just the synergies and the skills that are mobile and that you can portable, import them into a different, position. And it's funny because, like, this is a true story and maybe a joke. Someone can say, it's funny, but I don't know. But in my case, like every time I'm talking to someone, I give an example about stuff that happened to me, and it's really true. Like it's not a fake or anything. It's either something I've done at work or real life or experiences. And you'd be surprised how much stuff we have that is real that we've experienced, especially if you've been in the corporate space or in even personal life. I think everybody has some story of some sort that they can have as a concrete example of something that someone can ask about. And it's just how to utilize that information in the proper context. In this case, in an interview that has nothing to do with, okay, it's about business, but like people, it's because it's not really the question, that it's not really the content, it's really how you respond and whether you are actually go into the stuff you honing. They want to see the concept of you. Can you work under pressure? Can you do this? Can you deliver? And those are like, I mean, you talk about emergency. Like, if I don't do this, someone's gonna die. That's a pretty serious thing. I think that can apply into finances too. So it's the concept, and sometimes we don't relay these pieces of information in our minds, or we don't see them as equal or somewhat similar that can be utilized. And some people's like, oh, that's not appropriate. Well, it could be. It's just how you phrase it, how you present it, how you, I guess, format it into whatever the request is. So thank you for that's actually a skill that that is super, especially for interviewing, and getting into jobs and things like that. Because I've interviewed thousands. I'm not talking about in the media, in the real world and in the corporate, and I don't actually, like in my interviews, this role play. I'll give you a scenario and let's talk about it.
Mm.
And then literally, and I tell them like, oh, if I was this, no, I don't tell you to tell me what would you do. I tell you to tell me I'm your client, I'm the patient, whatever. We are interacting. So I'm giving you a scenario where at this store, whatever, you meet me, let's talk. Or I'm coming to you and your product, talk about this stuff. So it makes it a very different, level. But some people can, and like that old thing, sell me the pen. It's not really how. It's not about the pen. It's really what is your approach.
Mhm.
Are you going to get into the features of that pen and stuff, or are you going to find that what the needs of this person, whether even they qualify for that pen? So
Right.
it's those are. I mean, look at, by the way, this is again we're talking about but I have a CEO and a corporate leader, so I have to throw in some corporate stuff in there and some skills because they're applicable, right? And I think we can use any single information that we see to our own a game at any given time. So whatever angle we have in our workspace, in family, it can apply to real stuff in business. And we apply, I mean, it's amazing. Like someone's a manager, we manage life every day. As kids, we manage things. It's how you do it and so on. You lead life in your own space. Sometimes some of these skills are portable again to the corporate. So thank you for highlighting that. Now the other part that you said is very interesting because the comparison between the UK and the US, you're right, is very, there's, to your point, there is the concept of care, or people are getting serviced as they need it. But that's the thing, it's not wellness.
Mhm.
It's not before, it's the after. Pretty much you don't see the doctor until you're sick.
Right.
You don't see the hospital until you're really in a condition where the hospital is a needed place to be. So but how can we do it before? To your point, the coding system in the US is all about claims and billables, right? Here's your claim, here's your what I forgot the code, the CTV code, whatever the acronym goes.
Yeah.
So that those are the codes that you're going to get billed for, billing for, right? So on the flip side, to your point, wellness is not really applicable because like there is no real codes for this stuff that you're going to do. Yeah, let's give them some yoga sessions before and get them stretching and meditating and give them a little bit of, I don't know, fresh air to breathe. So stuff like that may be very difficult. So
Mhm.
you're right. You got to get through loops and hoops to figure out this design, and then it depends what insurance you take. Is it private? Is it Medicaid? Is it Medicare? A lot of these wellness, programs may not even go there because it's very difficult to navigate, or it's not even part of the system. So it's a tough place. So thank you for highlighting that because I think that's a big differentiator. And again, yes, you're right. I mean, we do have the joke, and it's not a real joke. I mean, I think it's sad to hear, sometimes healthcare being a sick care because you really receive it when you're sick, and most of us, we want to be healthy, not sick, so I want to see me getting better before I know that I'm bad, because in that case I'm getting diagnosis and then I have I mean, maybe medication and stuff, whatever, some tools to kind of stop the pain, or maybe just prevent, further stuff, or maybe not even get into the root cause, which is another problem with all of us. I mean, between nutrition, between all the stuff that's out there, pollution, you name it, we have a lot of problems. But if we can determine these things, now I think, if I'm not mistaken, in your world, you were in that whole concept of healthcare. I'm
Mhm.
sure there's a moment where you realize, oh, when the system is not where it needs to be. And I think that's really what drove you to create, KNKO, because I can see you like, here you go, the same concept with me. Like, I'm in the healthcare, I see a lot of stuff, but I don't think people know about how this healthcare system works in the first place. So
Right.
therefore I started radio and the show. But that's the same concept. You're like, here's the healthcare. It's very broken for what it's worth. I mean, let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
People listen, I used to make a joke in our system. So in back in the 90s, the demonstration project for Medicaid programs was launched in New York. And so we had the card, like the first, like one of the plans. We were 5 of the demo plans in New York. And we had this gold card that we called the gold card, literally. So I used to joke, this is basically a credit card for your bill, for your healthcare.
Right.
So people received that benefit. They just used it as they pleased. They're literally, I have a cold, we all can get a cold, and a cold can go maybe a couple of days, and and it goes away. But by the time that cold is over, that person's been like 5 times to different doctors because they don't see a result. And obviously it's free, so why not? I'm just gonna pay and go, here's my card, let's go. Here's my card, let's go.
Mm.
Sorry. That's what it caused the whole system in managed care and how to control the costs and stuff. But that's the problem. So it was never about, I'm gonna be preventing me being sick.
Right.
Like, okay, let me figure out what to do. And that's
Right.
how it went. So that's kind of like the problem. So in your case, I'm sorry, I have some allergies and they're killing me. But the talking about wellness, right? But here's the thing, right? You saw this system, you've lived the system, you also lived in the financial world. And you kind of put this whole idea that "Hey, I think I have a solution." And by the way, I want to again commend you for being an innovator in a way because you see a problem, create a solution. And the solution is really let's do this and help these people before they get sick. If we can actually do this, there's a room for that. There's actually an appetite for
Mhm.
getting people healthier. And I think to your point, now a little bit more, there's some awareness, but we're not anywhere close where we need to be. So now you went through this. Where was when you realized, like, okay, this is no good. I got to do something about it. What was that look like? What did that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, there's probably two parts to it. I think the first part, segueing a little bit from what we were talking about earlier, there's a concept called the second mountain, and so and it's very common, the with many people where they will spend the first part of their career building skills, developing, gaining experience, really trying to climb the ladder, whatever career you're in, and then they hit a certain point, and it's usually middle age, kind of in your 40s, give or take, where you say, okay, I've built my career and I've got some, hopefully some financial stability, but ultimately, like I'm pretty solid with where I am, and I have all these skills. Now, how can I go and take these skills and do something that's meaningful for me, and with my aligned with my purpose? And so that was very much part of my own journey as well, right? I've developed all these skills. Well, now how can I go and use them in a way that's aligned with my purpose as a healer? And then aligned with that, kind of the other side of this is, to your question, a number of things when I look at the healthcare systems is it's really only in the West that, so UK, US, that we've split things out. We have doctors for the mind and psychiatrists, and then we have doctors for the body and things like that. But when you look at the East and you look at these kind of ancient systems for healthcare or wellness or whatever you want to call it, but they treat the whole human, right? They treat everything as connected. They treat the human as one being. And that's true because the mind does affect the body affects the mind. Both of them affect the nervous system.
Mhm.
So what was really important to me was to create something that helps, really encompasses all of them. And that's really what I brought together with KNKO. So there's three core principles with how we operate at KNKO. I mean, our goal fundamentally is to make wellness easy, right? We want you to achieve your wellness goals as easily as possible. Now, how we do that, I mean, in some ways it's kind of irrelevant as long as we achieve the goal. But really how we do that is in three core pillars.
Mm.
One is that KNKO is everything you need for mind, body, and nervous system in one place. So we have massage and yoga, or guided meditation. We have wellness assessments. We have clinical hypnotherapy, et cetera, et cetera. The second is that it's integrated. So we build connected teams around our clients. So your massage therapist speaks to your hypnotherapist, who speaks to your yoga teacher, who speaks to whatever other practitioner might be that you're working with. So we understand our clients at a much, much deeper level, and we understand the connections of what's going on, and then we are able to help our clients achieve things that they either never been able to achieve before, or they've struggled and hoped to achieve for years. We're able to kind of make those breakthroughs with our clients. And then the third is we come to you. So most of our services can be performed virtually. We have clients all around the globe now, especially in things like hypnotherapy and yoga teaching. The only service that does have to be in person is massage, for obvious reasons. But otherwise, every other service can be provided virtually. And even if you're in our local area of the San Francisco Bay Area, we come to you. So we come to your home, we come to your workplace, we come to wherever you want to help make the wellness services fit into your schedule and make it as seamless as possible. So that's really, a key concept. Now, one additional thing I wanted to say was, you noted about some of the challenges with the healthcare systems, and I agree in that, I I guess technically I am an innovator, right? I'm doing something new and I'm doing something different, and I believe I'm doing something powerful and meaningful. At the same time, the in the wellness space, there's so much that still needs to be done in terms of making it more regulated and making it more consistent. So if I take the hypnotherapy space for an example,
Mhm,
unfortunately, the hypnotherapy space is a bit of a wild west, right? It's an incredibly powerful therapy, right?
mhm,
We're able to help our clients, address traumas, lose weight. I've had clients who, we do hypnobirthing or hypnosis for childbirth, where we've had clients who've given birth with zero drugs, zero pain, completely relaxed, 20 minutes of pushing, zero tearing. There's incredible things that we can achieve in that space. Now, unfortunately, there's a very big difference between those people who've done 300 hours or more of in-person clinical training to become a clinical hypnotherapist, and people who've taken a weekend course, online, and they've now said, "Oh yeah, I've gotten this random certification." So, for example, with my business, every single one of our clinical hypnotherapists are ACHE certified. It's a regulatory board with the highest standards. ACHE certified clinical hypnotherapists. So they have done hundreds of hours of training before they
mhm.
even, start working with clients, versus those who might be in the wild, who just did an online course. So when you go back to insurance companies and the healthcare system, it's hard for them to take certain wellness services seriously because they're not as regulated as they should be. Now, my business, we absolutely have, every single one of ours are fully certified practitioners, but not every business is like that. So there's a number of challenges on both sides, even just on the wellness side, that the industries need to really tighten their britches around how they operate. But obviously, for businesses like mine and the way we operate, we make sure we have the gold standard of practitioners, and as a result, we're able to achieve incredible things with our clients.
well, there's a few things there. One, I love what you said about the idea that at least the first piece whereby you get enough information in life and you achieve a certain momentum. And there's only two ways to do this. It's either you don't do anything with it and it just goes to waste, or you do something about it and use that skill and whatever knowledge that you accumulated over the years for better things. And by the way, I'm like you. I do
Mm.
believe that in the concept of knowledge is meant to be given and handed down to others, and not just to be dispersed and lost, in I guess the abyss. Because and that's really it. That's the difference between some people that make a difference and leave a legacy in this world. And we have a lot of legacy from our history, from different nations and civilizations, because these people did that, whether through books or through innovative stuff, and we use them today. Or you can just be like, I don't care. It's not my problem. The world can, suffer the way they want, and just, that's it. And you can, and by the way, there's benefit to that too. You can still make out, a good living out of it, and but at the same time, there is a mission behind it. So you create that level of, I guess, purpose in whatever you do, and it has a different meaning. So you and I were, and you're one of your frameworks is aligned. So I am aligned with you, brother. This is all synchronized here. So that's one. And then I love the concept that you're talking about, the idea that the fragmented healthcare, because to your point, every level, like psychiatry, medicine, regular medicine, you have different levels, and they're all different. Dentistry, everything is, they have their own regulatory stuff, and they work, the laws are different for a lot of these things. Meanwhile, in the Eastern and more ancient, systems, it's all a holistic approach, which you are taking here. So it's not only it's just holistic, you kind of get into the whole concept from all angles. So there's nothing that escapes. It's your mind, your body, your spirit, everything's working at, in tandem, and you make sure that the person is getting all that, and you coordinate with whatever they need in terms of the medical, whatever else that need to be done. So there's good communication. So it's a full 360, and it's not just bits and pieces. That's a big concept. You're right. We're still away from that, across the spectrum. There's a lot more work to be done. I mean, listen, I've worked in healthcare systems, and we can't even communicate with each other correctly in divisions, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem, right? And you have these power trips. Every department wants to kind of like, we're better, this, that, the other. And but I've worked with others where there is more synergy. There's more like, holistic approach where patient or a member for us, for example, in the insurance, will come in and they get every single. They have the social worker, they have the primary, they have the specialties that they need. There's the pharmacy that's involved in there if they need anything. But again, it's post disease and illness, not pre. In this case, you're doing all the wellness part, which is the different concept. But the idea is that there. But to your point, we can take that model and expand it more and do more of it, and we can make a big difference. But you're right, it's still in infancy, I would say, but here, listen, that's why I say you're innovative, you're a pioneer, you're building something that is still in the baby stages across the most of the nations. I mean, believe it or not, it's becoming more relevant. I mean, I can see, like, dude, a couple of weeks ago, we were in UAE, so we were in Dubai, and there's this huge, meeting we go to, and it's these big coming from China. They're doing these wellness retreat. I mean, they're like projects that have villas and homes, and I mean, it's like high-end stuff with a full wellness program internally. I mean, you basically buy a membership to this world, and you basically like everything that you think about, to beautify you and get you superly, well, it's available now. Of course, maybe that's not for everybody in all the communities and all the levels of socioeconomics, but the concept is there, and there's more of these wellness, like wellness tourism now. It's getting bigger. You can find these places where you can do the full thing. They have them in Turkey. There's actually in the US too. There's some. I've had a couple of discussions already with different, groups where they have these things where you can really go in and get yourself, rebirth. I don't know. I mean, you really get refreshed from scratch. I mean, you get rejuvenated, right? And stuff like that. So there is stuff that is happening now, but not to the level. There's still small, units here and there, but it's also the pricing and all the stuff, and there's more stuff. To your point, I mean, the insurance space is not close enough to mitigate, some of these services and deal with them. So it's going to be a challenge, but I know you figure it out. But I love the idea that you put all that with your expertise, your experience. Now you're in the world, making it real time happening, and that's a big deal. And you're helping people now. So that's my next question. What are some of the? I mean, it's open, so it's literally accessible to people. I love what you said. It's worldwide. Most of the stuff can be done anywhere other than the physical massage. And by the way, I think you touched on the hypnotherapy level. Listen, I've done a few shows about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. I actually was very skeptical years back. My first experience with hypnosis was in '95, and my boss at the time, my I guess my mentor, I would call him, not my boss, because he's really one of my mentors. He brought in a hypnotherapist, to the office. We had a session. It was a great experience, and I was like, okay, this stuff is pretty cool. And then I was on a cruise ship, a couple of years back, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna test this, and I did it for food. Like, I did this session, and at the time I was maybe like 30 pounds more than now. So that helped me for about 5 years. I was pretty cool. I mean, food was not really something I was interested in. I ate, but I was, that craving and all that stuff was gone. So that stuff works. Hypnotherapy is a real thing. Hypnosis does work. But I love what you said. It's, not everybody's equal in terms of where they stand in terms of their qualifications. And you're right, in the insurance space, we have credentialing. So, and for those people that are watching and listening, you have to have some credentials to be able to pass into and become on a roster or director of a provider network in any of the insurance companies. And so if you don't have your legit numbers and you're signed up into different programs, you can't be participating. So you're right. I mean, you can, get a 2 hours, course, or maybe a weekend thing, get a certification. That's one thing. Or you can become a fully certified, licensed, practitioner. That's a whole different thing. So I love your approach that you're doing it legit. You're doing it the right way. You're doing it with the full, spectrum of like, my people, my team is top notch at what they do. So therefore, it creates a whole different level. And that also credibility is important and results are important. But if you have the wrong staff, talk about the wrong stuff, so it's not a cool thing to have, right? But really, this is impressive stuff. So thank you for sharing that, and that's an important thing. Again, so now the question is like, the work you do, different people can benefit from it. Whether it's high performing people at work, regular people that just have, maybe different problems or physical problems. So let's talk about some of the stuff that you do at your, at KNKO. And by the way, we're going to talk about the name because you and I had a brief discussion about that, because that's an important thing, because I think it has to do with Eastern culture. So we'll talk about that as well. So that's a kind of loaded question there with a couple of things.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to respond to you covered a whole bunch of wonderful points then. I'd love to respond to a couple of them. So, firstly, from wellness, while the sort of connections to insurance are probably more in an infancy stage, the industry itself is gigantic. It's trillions of dollars every year in wellness, and it's only growing. And also, on top of that, more the younger generations, as the generations pass, they are more and more inclined towards health and wellness than prior generations. And so it's only growing in its nature. Now, you mentioned that you first experienced hypnosis in 95. Now, unless you are 31 years old, if I'm doing my maths correctly, I would contest that you actually experienced hypnosis earlier than that. So most children are effectively, well, actually, let me take a step back. So hypnotherapy, or hypnosis and hypnotherapy, it's really therapy for the subconscious mind. So if you think about what people normally say, hey, if I've got a therapist, really what they're talking about is talk therapy. And talk therapy works with the conscious mind. Now, if you imagine the mind like an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg that sticks out above the water is the conscious mind, and then the giant piece of ice that is below the water, that's the subconscious. And children up until about the age of 5, sometimes kind of up until about the age of 7, are just constantly in the world of the subconscious. It's why they believe dinosaurs are real, and well, I mean they were real, but
Unicorns.
unicorns are real, right? And dragons, and the people on the TV, they believe everything is real, because they're just living in the world of the subconscious. And then it's only around between the ages of 5 and 7 that the critical thinking mind, the conscious mind, starts to really take form. And so, one, you have to be very, very careful about the things that you say to children, because they go straight in, right? The subconscious mind is where your values, your beliefs sit. So they take that in directly, and you have to be very careful about how you speak and interact with children of that age. But also, you could argue that children are effectively in a constant state of hypnosis. So that's why I argue that it would actually be before 95 that you experienced hypnosis, keeping in mind that hypnosis, or the state of hypnosis, is a very natural state. It's a brainwave state that exists between waking and sleep. It's called the theta brainwave state. It's actually the same brainwave state you go into with deep meditation or prayer, but those, usually you'll go into kind of the upper end of that brainwave state, and hypnosis may take you into a lower end. And it's just above sleep. So that's why you hear the word sleep a lot in hypnosis language, because the closest state that you might be familiar with, if you've not experienced hypnosis before, is sleep. And so you'll respond to that and kind of go to that state, but you're not actually asleep, you're in a state just above it. And so we experience it. We kind of go into that state when we're going to sleep every night, right? We're going through that brainwave state. We come through it again when we wake up in the morning. But one of the most common examples that I give to my clients, or when I'm talking about it, is highway hypnosis. So if you've ever taken a long drive, maybe let's say it's 3-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive, whatever it might be, maybe for the first 10 or 15 minutes, you're paying attention and whatnot. And then you just kind of get into a mode where you're driving. Now, your conscious mind might be off doing whatever, thinking about your day, thinking about your plan for the week, making a grocery list. It doesn't really matter. But you're still driving through that entire time. And then you reach home or your destination. You go, wait, hold on. Where did the last 2 hours go? Where did the last hour go? This drive was really quick. Well, actually, you were in a state of hypnosis. Your conscious mind was doing whatever it was doing, but your subconscious, you were driving subconsciously, and you're doing a very complex action, right? You were indicating, accelerating, braking, turning, changing lanes, whatever it might be. You were keeping yourself safe, you were being aware of your environment, but you were doing all of that subconsciously. You weren't thinking about it consciously. And so that is a very common example of being in a state of hypnosis. And hypnosis itself is simply just being in a very relaxed and focused state. So that's where like I said, I go back to, if you say that was the first time you experienced it, I might, gently kind of counter that with the idea that I think you've experienced it a lot more than you think, and earlier than you think.
Well, thank you, Farhan. Well, actually, you're right. I mean, I was referring to like as a professional session kind of concept, but you're right. I mean, you know how many times I've actually gone behind the wheel and I'm on the phone and actually went the wrong way because I wound up going to the standard, route that I've always taken. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm supposed to be going a different route. I mean, I wasn't paying attention, but your mind is already scheduled to go to your office every day. But today is not the office day. I'm going to somewhere else. And I wound
Right.
up literally get into the office like, how did that happen? And you're right. I mean, we see it to your point. The 2 hours go by, you don't even care. You're just talking. And you just the road is the same. Your mind is already conditioned,
Right.
and it's amazing how powerful that is. But it is a real thing. It does happen. I mean, I've seen smoking cessation with that. I've seen food, weight management, all kind of stuff. Even relationship. I mean, I love what you said. Birthing. I mean, you can get someone hypnotized to have a child with no epidurals and no no inducement. I mean, that's pretty cool stuff, right? I mean, it's amazing, and we need to hear more of those things. And maybe those are solutions for the skeptics out there. This stuff works, folks. I mean, it's not a some sort of woo-hoo stuff. It's real. It's always existed.
Mm.
People use it. I mean, yeah, maybe you can use it for the wrong stuff. Although, like there's a couple movies that kind of show you, like it's like I'm gonna tell you, like here's the pendulum, and you're like you'll be like, "Oops, you're done." Go steal a bank. No, that doesn't work that way. I mean, I think we are still in control of the beast, right, at all times. But I mean, am I getting that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. So one thing I'll say about myself is I'm a scientist at heart. I mean, I ultimately my purpose is to help people. I'm a healer, but I'm also a scientist. My degree was mathematics. I worked in risk management, right, for an investment firm. So what I love, like I genuinely enjoy, is learning about why these things work. We've the many of these wellness therapies, you think massage therapy, yoga, hypnotherapy, whatever it might be, they've been around for thousands of years. And
Mhm.
really, they've used those thousands of years to refine the therapy, to really find what works and how it can be really effective. And most of that was probably through trial and error. They tried one thing, it didn't work as well, and then they tried another thing, they're like, this really works. And then that became more and more of the refined protocols. Um, which makes sense. But now we have the science to catch up. So now we can say, oh, there's this thing that works. We didn't used to know why it worked. We just knew it worked. Well, now we can understand why it works, right? We can understand blood flow or pressure or circulation. We can understand that when we chant in meditation and we sit and we say om, most people go, well, that's really woo woo. Well, the science behind that is that your vagus nerve, which starts behind your eye, runs down the back of your throat, and the vagus nerve controls your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest nervous system. So when you chant and you say om, or you make a very deep sound like that, it vibrates the vagus nerve and it activates your rest and digest nervous system. It makes you go into a calmer state. And if you do that in a group, there is a resonance with the group and that creates greater vibration. So you go into a deeper state of calm as
Mm.
a result of it. So for me, all of my practice, is there's always an aspect of me really wanting to understand the science and why something works the way it works. I will just add another note on that. With all of these therapies, I can understand how they came about, right? The kind of the natural states. And if you think of massage, it's like, okay, well, if I massage my arm, that feels good, right? And I can understand how massage was born. Or yoga, I like to stretch. Okay, that feels good. The one therapy which absolutely I believe in works, right? It's an incredible, incredible therapy, but I have no idea how they started it, is acupuncture. Like I don't know who the first person was who was like, "Oh, you have a problem. Let me start sticking pins in you," as a result to try and see if we can make that work. Again, an incredible therapy, truly, truly powerful, really works. I just don't know who started it and decided to continue refining it over thousands of years. But that aside, the as I mentioned, hypnotherapy does truly work with the subconscious mind. It's around kind of working with specific brainwave states and language and suggestibility. Now, is there a lot of stigma around it, or the act of hypnosis? Hypnosis is being hypnotized, hypnotherapy is therapy. So there's a lot of stigma around hypnosis or being hypnotized from movies and stage shows, but that is very, very different to hypnotherapy, which is therapy, right? And to your point, yeah, the most common examples that people will use is smoking cessation, weight loss, anxiety. Um, yeah, they're kind of the most common ones, but it absolutely can be used for anything. And what we have found at KNKO, we've had, again, clients, we've done hypnosis for childbirth, we've done male sexual health and sexual performance, we've done a wide variety of different, underlying issues. It can be relational issues, it can be self-belief, it can be ego strengthening that's needed. It just goes on and on and on, including health issues as well. And in those instances, we would very much make sure that we team with the individual's healthcare practitioners as well, right? So we'll coordinate with their doctors or their nurses or whoever it might be to make sure that we are supporting it the right way. And kind of circling back to what you were saying earlier, just on that note, insurance has started to recognize many of the wellness services. So at least in the US, you can get massage through insurance. I believe that there are ways, if you have like a HSA, FSA, and a letter of medical necessity from your doctor, you can get various wellness services that are paid for through healthcare funds or through insurance, including hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy for weight loss is an example of that. If you had if you were overweight, or maybe you had diabetes or something like that, hypnotherapy for weight loss there are ways to have that connected with your insurance company or be approved for it through a letter of medical necessity, and use your HSA FSA fund. So it is starting to get recognition and that's where we talk about the infancy of the connections. While you have these two gigantic industries of healthcare and wellness, which are unfortunately mostly separated in the West. So the connections are in their infancy, but they are growing by the day and getting more and more powerful. So, and I can give a lot more examples around hypnotherapy and talk about that because it's an incredible, therapy and science that I really enjoy.
Well, it is, and by the way, I've used those sessions even for work. I mean, to get our teams, really reconditioned, feeling good about themselves, getting real good at what they do, and talking about belief, talking about maybe getting rid of anxiety, getting I mean, you can use a lot. You said it, self belief, like I need to improve myself. Maybe because we constantly talk bad to ourselves or we hear bad things. You were told you're not good, blah 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 blah. But the more we get some, I guess, we tap into that subconscious the right way, we can do more. And there's a lot of good stuff that's available. And I think we're 90% in the subconscious anyways. A lot of the stuff that we have, it's kind of running on cruise control behind the scenes, right? And, because that's how it's supposed to, that's how we're made, I guess. Yeah. And, this stuff is real. I mean, I the more I do this work, the more I learn about this and how it functions. I mean, the more it just makes clear sense. And it's amazing. And, and I love what you said, like, I mean, there's more practices to this. And, the other part is interesting. You said you're a mathematician, you're a scientist. I mean, in insurance, we do risk management. We do a lot of assumptions and actuary business, right? That's you guys. You kind of figure out, what works, what doesn't. So that's an important piece of the work. And, but you're taking it to the next level. And I love what you said about some of these programs. You're right. For the insurance space, for example, we do want people to be healthier, right? I mean, talking about risk. And so if there's a program that can reduce, the access to the hospital and maybe the cost of medication and all the stuff that that can happen from somebody who's got diabetes or some other conditions, that could work. I mean, I'm sure the medical director will probably approve some of these procedures because it can make a difference. I got a little guest with us here. It's my cat, just came up. Just say hi. But anyway, so that's kind of like, an important piece of the work you do, and I appreciate it. So now let's talk about align and focus. Hey, dude. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Align and focus. Yeah. So I do work a lot with high performing individuals and people who have anxieties stemming from a number of those things that you mentioned as an example. So, and I loved the examples that you gave and that you you have used these things to help your teams as a result. So one example, for example, I can give here, or a couple of examples I can give. I've had many individuals who really struggle with their inner critic, right? They have this inner voice that's very, very critical of their performance, of everything that they do. And it's just a constant drain on their emotional and mental energy. Or I've had a couple of clients who are female, they're ethnic minority, and they were brought up in households where they were told that you should be seen but not heard, right? That their voices aren't really valued. Now
Mhm.
they're incredible, incredible people and leaders, and so now they are C-suite individuals. They are sat in boardrooms, and yet they feel themselves, everything else being equal, they still feel themselves that their voice, they shouldn't speak up as much as the other people in the room, right? They don't have as much of a right to be there, and that's kind of some of that limiting inner beliefs that were installed when they were children. So we're able to really help uh, re you know recode those belief systems to make them much more empowered, and therefore effectively get out of their own way, right? Stop the inner critic, or kind of create an empowering belief as a result. So there's a lot of wonderful work we can do in that space as a result.
Well, listen, I mean, I love the concept. It's just a full, comprehensive package that can, make you really feel good inside and out. I mean, and I think that I'm not exaggerating here, because again, massage. I mean, to your point, there's the feel of it, but what it does to your body. There's the hypnotherapy where you can actually get people to really tap into those resources and get better in believing themselves. I mean, it is amazing what we're capable of, as a
Mhm.
humans. I mean, we're capable of so much good and innovation and so on, but you got to tap into that resource. Sometimes we just don't have the tools to do that. This helps them get there. And overall wellness, I mean, there's also confidence. If you're really feeling good about yourself,
Mhm.
physically, and you can actually perform better in anything. I mean, as a leader, that. I mean, you look the part, you feel the part, you have the energy, you can drive people, you can motivate people. But imagine if you're like, oh, okay, people, hey, let's get business going. I mean, that doesn't sound very attractive, right? So that can make a big difference, even from just the perspective of things. So now I want to go to the name, because I
Mm.
mean that's got some tradition behind it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the name Kenko. So Kenko is actually the Japanese word for health and wellness. And I love that, again, going back to the East, that it is seen as wellness and health isn't seen as two separate things, it's seen as combined, because really it's about living well. And more, even, I mean, again, I work with a wide range of clients, across my company and my practitioners. We work with a huge range of clients, and that can be from high net worth individuals through to people who just need help with kind of something more specific, whatever it might be. But having said that, every single person uh, consistently craves to live life better, right? To live life in a greater set of wellness. And there are many people, and I've been there. I've been there as a young man when I was a nurse, and visiting people as they were dying in hospices, or working in elderly units, and any one of them would have given up their entire fortune for just to be well, right? Just to have good wellness and good health again. And so now more and more people are realizing that actually being well and living life well, and how easy life can become when you are in good wellness and in good health, how valuable that is. That's actually considered the like true wealth, right? As opposed to money in the bank that you can't take, or having money in the bank obviously can affect certain aspects of how you experience life, but all the money in the bank doesn't make it easier to get up in the morning, right? It doesn't make it easier to move. It doesn't make
True.
you give you all that energy. So there is so much there. And so, the idea of Kenko and what we do is, again, just trying to make wellness and being well and enjoying life in whatever way it may be, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We are making that as easy as possible and as cohesive as possible with how we how we work with our clients. And ultimately, one additional note I'll say is that the human mind and body and nervous system have a incredible capacity for healing, like far beyond what most people realize. And and not only just healing, but in terms of being well and also dictating your experience. For some people, the concept of giving birth with zero drugs and zero pain and be completely relaxed is just, they like their minds may not even be able to comprehend it, until they experience it. But that is what we are capable of naturally, right? Because the body knows how to give birth. It actually is designed to do that in a relaxed state. And as we do that, the more relaxed we are, the more oxytocin women will produce, the more efficient their contractions are, the more they will dilate, the easier the birth becomes, the more relaxed they can stay, etc., etc. It's a positive cycle. So there's all these things that are out there that people aren't aware of. And so, again, the human mind, body, nervous system has this incredible capacity. What we need to do in the way that we operate is give those aspects of ourselves, our mind, body, and nervous systems, the space and time and knowledge to do so. And so that's what we do with our clients. We're able to work with them and integrate into their lives in such an easy way that we create space for them to be well, right? And to allow their bodies and minds and nervous systems to do what they need to do naturally, to recover in whatever way from exhaustion, from burnout, maybe to let go of those limiting beliefs, right? As a
Mhm.
CEO and founder, and working with many other, CEOs and founders, there are many that operate in a space where they don't have real psychological safety because they feel, as a CEO or founder, that everybody expects them to be perfect all the time, right? Their investors, their employees, their other C-suite individuals, their vendors or business partners, but probably usually most of all themselves, right? They hold themselves to such a high standard. And it's a protection mechanism, which is that, there are good elements to that, but ultimately when you operate in a place of no psychological safety, no one around you does. And these are people who make real decisions that have real impact. If your business doesn't do well, you are laying people off, you're making people redundant. That suddenly now impacts not just your employees, but all of their families as well. So people are in this stressed, burnt out mode, or operating from lack of psychological safety and making decisions that could affect thousands of people, right? Or if not more, depending on how big your company is. So being able to take the good things around that behavior, that protection mechanism, and retain that, but let go of all the things that hold you back, suddenly you're now skyrocketing in your performance, in the way that you think, in your clarity, in your focus, in your decision making, in your everyday. You're just operating without this huge weight on your back that you've been carrying through life. So, again, what we really aim to do is to work with our clients to really achieve the lives and wellness that they've always, hoped for. Maybe they've worked years and years for. Maybe they don't even know it's possible, and we, help them make it possible in the way that they operate.
Well, thank you. So a quick question. I know we're coming to the end of the show, but here's the thing. I mean, today's society is very complex, and you kind of gave some of the I guess the attributes, or at least descriptives, to a leader, and especially in an owner, or someone who owns a company, a CEO, and so on and so forth. But in general, I think people are just getting too much pressure through everything that we're going through, between the finances, between making ends meet, and of course the health concepts today also. I mean, the food that we have, everything is just contributing to more of our, I would say, own illnesses and disease. Is more, I guess, potential
Mhm,
than back in the days. Our ancestors were a lot less, stressed out.
mhm,
Just stress alone is actually making us a lot more, I guess, weak, in the sense that we're not well. And
mhm,
so therefore, and many people may not know that there's a way out. You are bringing some of the services. So do you find that you're seeing some of the those society, concepts are really drivers behind where people, because I'm sure you do an assessment to your people,
Mm.
and are you finding similar common points whereby that's really what it is coming from the environment, whatever that may be.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of, there is actually something called good stress. So up to a certain degree, stress is productive, right? It can get us out of bed in the morning. It can, make us be productive in what we do. So up to a certain level, but then beyond that level, it starts to become destructive. And especially when we are carrying out these kinds of stresses every single day, in our system, if it's not expressed externally, if we might get angry or frustrated, it can actually get expressed internally, in our wellness and in our health. So there's many ways that these get carried, and anxiety is actually one of the most common things that people come to us with, and we help them with. And actually, on that note, what I'd love to do is offer your listeners, Chris, I have an anxiety guide, a way to think about anxiety and stress and to change it in the moment. And so I'd love to, offer that kind of. I'll share the link with you, and you can share it with your listeners to have access to that guide. Just as a wonderful sort of gift, and hopefully it'll provide value to somebody and help somebody out there.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And that's a great thing. I think anxiety is our worst nightmare. I think everybody's anxious about life. That
Mm.
hasn't happened yet. That's really our problem. We don't know about the future, but everybody anticipates the future, no matter what that is, and it becomes a problem. I think that whatever that guide's going to do, it's going to make a whole new life for someone that may be able. So I'll take that, and certainly share with the public here. I know we've exceeded an hour, and there's so much I can ask you. I mean, you're just a wealth of knowledge and stuff, for us. Maybe we'll do a second comeback, but certainly, I want to just to bring to the audience, like, so the program is it multiple programs that can obtain different ones, and if there is a particular program that they can select, is what's the length of that? Sometimes these programs have a time frame, whatever, just to get them a little bit of clarity on how that's working with Kenko look like.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So clients can engage with us in kind of two key different ways. One is they can come to us for a la carte services. So if they just want a massage, or maybe they want to work on just weight loss, and from a hypnotherapy perspective, they can give us a call, and consultations are free. So they can set up a consultation with me or one of my practitioners. We do these 20-minute consultations. We talk through what you want to achieve, and we see if everything makes sense as in the right fit, and we can build the program for you as a result. So there's the a la carte side of the house, and then we also do wellness memberships. So wellness memberships is really where we then build that connected team around you. We do an in-depth wellness assessment. We build an entire program for you, align that with your day-to-day, and then we deliver that to you through your basically as part of your everyday life. And again, we make it as seamless as possible for you. So they're the two methods. And then separate to that, more and more now we're actually also expanding into the corporate space. So we are now doing employee wellness programs as well for businesses, because if you have, I mean, one, it helps us to help more people, and two, then in turn helps businesses to grow and be successful.
Well, thank you, and for clarifying that. And actually, that's a great point, because there is an actual tendency now. There's a trend. Companies are introducing more wellness programs in their corporate space for the employees. Because I mean, at the end of the day, happy minds, happy performance, right? I mean, people are happier; they will actually do better for you, right? It makes a big difference. And it's funny. I was watching. I don't know if you like movies. There's a new movie on Netflix. The story about Air Jordan, the Nike,
The shoes.
and like yeah, the shoes. But like even back then, you look at them in within their space, they were already in the culture of like allowing people to do certain, like have fun, gaming, and all the stuff within the culture to get them just a little bit more relaxed in the workspace, right? And that's like years back. I mean, this is like it's depicting a few decades behind. But the idea is that wellness is a great thing, and the more you give access to your folks, especially, I mean, as leaders, your leader, you have a team, your team is the most important asset, because if they're good, they're going to do the right thing by your patients and your members and your clients, and therefore everything else is going to be, the reputation impeccable, the results are going to be there, and the people will be very happy and pleased with the outcomes. And that's across any, I don't care what business you're in. That's actually the first number one priority. If you take care of your staff, you take care of your clients.
Yeah,
Simple. And happy, happy work is going to be everything else, right? So you
absolutely.
wanted to add something to that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. I love everything that you're saying, and one note I'll say, just because we are kind of coming up to time here, it kind of similar to, I think, in line with what you were saying there, is people often think about burnout, right? To me, the idea is that we operate
Mm,
in the space of, we have these buckets of energy, and most people think about burnout when from a physical perspective, right? I've been working long hours, I haven't slept. So they think about kind of that physical energy being depleted. And if I just slept, I'd be fine. What they don't realize is you can burn out mentally, in terms of your focus, your ability to take in information, things like that. You can burn out emotionally because you've just got such a drain. I mean, people who have a very harsh inner critic, like, fundamentally burn out emotionally. You can burn out spiritually, where you're actually, everything else is good, but you're not really connected with what you're doing every day, and some people are really confused by that. They're like, well, everything in my life looks good, why do I feel so drained, why do I feel lost or empty? And it's because you're not connected with what you're doing every day, spiritually. And so I advise anybody who's listening to really think about that. If you are ever in a place where you're like, I feel drained, well, think about, which of those buckets is needs the most care right now. And they are connected as well, right? Ultimately, you can't just, like, be on form spiritually. I mean, I'm like, love what I do every day. So my spiritual bucket is overflowing all the time, but I still need to sleep, right? I can't just, like, operate, on one bucket overflowing and have one bucket that's empty. So you do need to balance them out. But really, for yourself or for others around you, finding ways to be kind to yourself, finding what gives you energy and what takes energy away, really, that's the key to sustainability here.
well, thank you. That's pretty powerful stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Farhan Zahid is the CEO of KNKO. You getting it from the source here. We got a lot of good stuff from him today. Definitely do check out his site. I'll have it on the description of the show. So if you or your company, you think there's a benefit to someone that is dear to you, and if you do run a division or company, this is definitely something. Wellness is a big deal. Let's get into that, and let's connect them. And again, consultation is available. Let's see what it does for you, and it certainly can make a big difference. I can see it. I know that the results are there. I know you've been doing this. You know exactly how it is, and the feeling behind it. I mean, I know that you're so excited, so happy because you know you're making a difference in
Yeah.
people's lives. To your point, it's not them, just them and their families. Everybody if you're a happy person, everybody around you is going to be happy
Mm.
because you walk in the street, you're giving your energy, your smile is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So, but if you're not doing too good, obviously the erection is going to be not as good. So, your work is magnificent, dude. I mean, I love it. I think your work is changing, people's lives, and I think, yeah, let's just keep doing what you're doing, brother. It's an awesome place to be, man. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I will also reflect that back on you. I think it's an incredible platform you've created here. You're helping so many people, just in what you're doing every day. And, like, it's a privilege and an honor to be part of this, and, with you. But ultimately, I hope you also take that time to recognize what you're doing and how many people you're helping. I think it is truly commendable.
Well, I'll take the compliment. I appreciate it coming from you. Obviously, it's a big deal for me, and certainly, listen. I mean, we're on a mission to change lives for the better. That's the bottom line, and I just hope that we can touch as many lives as possible. So, if you're watching, listening, share the wealth out there, folks. We just want more people to feel good about themselves and just be good. And there's no to be honest with you, it's a great feeling. It's better than any money you can have. I'm seriously. I mean, people may not get the idea behind it, but it's just a high. It's like a real dopamine hit, as in a technical term.
Yeah, very, very true. You're connected to something bigger than yourself, and it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Well, listen, Farhan, I know you have to go, people to see, company to run. Thank you so much for the time being with us and taking the time early on to get into this show. Again, that's it, folks. This is the end of the show. American Age. Yeah, I hope you've had a great time with us. Please check out this website, and connect with Farhan's team. And that's about it. We'll be talking